Hello, and welcome to our podcast with myself, Mark, and my associate, Steve. In these podcasts, Steve looks at the headlines or the news, not the headlines, the news, comments about it, and we discuss opinions between ourselves. We don't pretend to be a news site. You're more than welcome to agree or disagree with us. Whichever, please feel free to comment in the comment sections below. Okay, so over to Steve.
So, hi people again. What I've got for you today are some, to be truthful, are old news stories, but you'll find out they've got a link to something that's recent that happened the day before yesterday in Ukraine. So, what we'll do is we'll test your thoughts on a few subjects which I've known about quite a while, and work our way up to what the point that I'm trying to get to. So, Sergio Canavero is an Italian surgeon, and he, in 2017, became famous in the whole world because he wanted to do human head transplants. And he even got a volunteer, which a Russian guy, I shan't mention his name, who was tetraplegic, and he even was on the TV, and this total head transplant. They called it a total body transplant. Let's get this right. They called it a body transplant so as not to call it a head transplant, because calling it a head transplant would be more traumatizing for the people following the story. And the idea was that this Russian guy, he would have another body which was able put onto his head so that he could have a normal life, basically. Only this Russian guy, he backed out at the last minute and wouldn't go through with the operation, with the surgery. This Canavero claimed that he'd done this surgery on dogs and on monkeys, and that they'd survived, albeit not for a very long time. And he used the glue which surgeons use to close wounds, small wounds. If you cut yourself, you can go to hospital. In the old days, they used to stitch you up, and then after a while, they started using a certain glue, which closed the wound, and then your skin would heal over. And he said that this glue worked for his head transplant, or his body transplant, as the case may be. When this Russian guy, he backed out of the adventure, this Canavero, he in 2017 decided to go to China and do his research in China. And then all went quiet. All went quiet until January of this year. I was surprised to see a report in one of the, I think it was Newsweek or something like that, that this Canavero, he raised his head, if you pardon the pun, once again, saying that, first of all, he'd done his research in China, swapping heads on cadavers, on dead people, and the process of sticking all the nerves together, it's a very painstaking process. But he said that it worked. He managed to stick all the nerves together in the right places. And he had his work published in a magazine in December 22 last year, 22. And he said that he didn't really want to do a head transplant. It's easier to do a brain transplant. So you get somebody that's really old, you know, and the body's not going to last that much longer, like a Henry Kissinger sort of character. Scoop out the brain, stick it in a young body, and Henry Kissinger has got like another 100 years. It's over 100 years now.
There'll be lots of people happy to hear that, yes.
And he said to justify this of scooping the brain out and sticking the brain into another head and body is because the eyes and ears. You know, the eyes and ears. If you took a 100-year-old head and stuck it on a young body, perhaps the eyes are not all that strong and the ears is a bit deaf and things like this, you know. So you take the brain out and stick it in somewhere else. And this article appeared in a scientific a science magazine, peer reviewed. So somebody had gone taken the time out to look into this idea of brain transplanting. And so here we are, you know. Do we transplant brains, heads, or whole bodies? You know, where do we go from here? That's the first little thing for comments to hear about comments.
Right. Okay. It does make sense. I mean, what is a human body? It's a series of electrical contacts, in essence, and chemicals and things. It is rather interesting. I mean, obviously, people of my age grew up in the 70s and 80s on science fiction, Star Trek, and I'm thinking of the Borg, where the head comes down with the spinal cord that gets fused into other things. The Borg Queen. I mean, again, I remember magazines in the 80s where they were talking about this, fusing body parts and things. To be quite honest, it does make sense to actually just have the brain a lot easier. And if you got, I mean, the next stage would be to build a robot body, a cyborg, would be far more ethical and appropriate, I would suggest. Okay. I mean, the technology is almost there. I mean, some of the robots now, they can move and got mobility. The problem is, yes, using AI, artificial intelligence to get them to move and things. If you could manage to put a human brain in them, yeah, I'm taking this on a few paragraphs probably because probably talk about this for hours.
Oh well, Elon Musk in the US, I think it's called the FAA.
Yeah,
have given him the go ahead to put electrodes on people's brains and test them on AI.
Yeah, I mean that's what it is. That's what it is. I mean that's what's known about. I mean they're getting people now to move artificial limbs with the brain, plug it in there. Quality of life improves. Yeah, I mean I've seen it from a few years ago. They had a guy actually writing with an artificial limb. Okay, not brilliantly. I'm sure the guy was very happy to be writing anything with a hand. I mean, again, this is applied technology and research that is probably beneficial to people. I mean, I don't know about the prolonging of life, like you said, the Henry Kissinger scenario. Scoop the brain out. How'd you get that going? I seem to remember there was a Steve Allen. Steve Martin film about that, The Man with Two Brains, years ago. Again, it's joking, but the idea and the concept is there. We laugh about these things in science fiction and films, but if a writer can think of it, so a scientist can. The only thing stopping us doing these is our our technology on our imagination.
They say that you give the scientist the problem and ask them to resolve it.
Hmm.
You think of something, you just give it to a scientist and say, hey, solve that one.
Well, that's what scientists is. Research and development is, in effect. And sometimes they go down a thing, and sometimes they park an idea. Sometimes they accidentally find something. That's interesting. We might revisit that later. I mean, it's cost as well, obviously, cost and everything else. What we have to look at is the advantages of doing that. Maybe if somebody has been hurt in a car accident or something like that, there's an ethical and good reason to do something like this. Yeah, heart transplants and everything else. Find a donor body if you're going to go with the organic route, or as I've said, a robotic body. Yeah, maybe there's an argument for it. I do have a bit of a problem with the prolonging of life. In that essence, there's a reason why life is finite, and I probably mean this from a Christian point of view as well. You know, I believe that human bodies have a soul, or humans have a soul. What happens? You put them into something else, they're living forever. Is that natural or normal? There must be a point where the brain reaches a point of degeneration. Yeah, there must be a point. I mean, we know Alzheimer's happens in older people and things like that, regression. Henry Kissinger doesn't seem to have had that. There's another notable politician in the US that does seem to have that. Right. People laugh about it. It's very sad to see it, to be quite honest, in anyone. I know, yeah, it's easy to laugh, but okay, somebody's in a situation they shouldn't be in. But would you want to think about that? Indefinite life. That's my ethical problem. Yes, none of us want to die. And I remember watching Steve Jobs, who wasn't religious, talking about people that believe in God and heaven don't want to die. And that's absolutely true, you know. We want, you know, I want to delay meeting that up there as long as possible. So yeah, but as to whether it's ethical or anything else, we'd have to decide. I think there could be good reasons to have this happen. I think the prolonging of life might be a bit of a questionable scenario. So again, that's open to what you believe. I mean, yes, I've actually seen where, yeah, they've seen science fiction films again where they got it and they kept the brain's functioning hooked up to a laptop or something. You can still talk to it.
Normally, it's in a jar in the background with the bubbling, water.
Yeah. But yeah.
Well,
anyway.
Well, let's move on.
Yeah.
To a thing called a chimera.
Mm-hmm.
A chimera is from Greek mythology. It's an animal with a lion's head, a goat's body, and a dragon's tail.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, a chimera is when you get two species and you join them together to make a third species. It's got half of one and half of the other. We can see chimeras common day in the animal kingdom. We look at a mule, which is a cross between a horse and a donkey. You know, they're for all intents and purposes are chimeras. You know, one species crossed with another. You know, people sometimes do this with buffalo and cows to make a beefier animal to rear. But I was reading once again. This is going back a while, but I'll come down to the point of all of this in the end. Right?
Yeah.
In the US, they were doing pig-human chimeras. Now, the reason for doing the pig-human chimera was that the pig, in theory, the pig would grow human organs, and then the human organs could be taken out of the chimera and used to transplant into 100% human bodies. However, what they used to be able to get, the embryos, you know, they got viable embryos, but they had to kill the embryos because even the US put limits onto what, you know, how far their research could be done. But when you look at, it brings in two dilemmas. One is when does life begin? Because they were killing these embryos. And if a chimera had a human brain, would that be killing a human? Or would it be killing a pig? You know? So that is the dilemma and I think that's the real reason why the authorities in the US limited the research.
Yeah.
I don't know if they hoped that the researchers would fail, you know, but initially the researchers were allowed to have these embryos until 14 weeks. But they stretched it to 20 weeks. You know, they went over the top of the authorities and stretched them out a little bit further, so they could I don't know, dissect them better and see what they had once it opened up a little embryo.
Right.
So chew on that one.
Right. Okay. Okay. As to killing human beings, I think humans are already quite happy to kill each other. That's the reasons. Yeah, and brings into other debates about when does life actually start, which is obviously another big debate raging around the world at the moment. Again, sort of ethical problems. Yes, we have the technology to, if you like, grow natural human organs, be it using animals. Yes, I mean, when they're doing testing, it used to be for cosmetics, I believe they use pigs quite a lot because the skin's very similar to human, reacts in a similar way. Yeah, and other experiments as well, because pigs are very close to humans. Yeah,
but these were 100% pigs.
Yeah.
You know, what I'm trying to get to is that the chimeras could have had a human brain.
Yeah.
And where do you draw the line?
Yeah, this is what I'm saying.
Human, is it a pig?
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. Okay, you're going to grow human brains. You put a human brain, wherever it comes from, into a pig. You grow it from birth, effectively. Yeah, you cross inseminate, I think is a term where you use, or however they do it, or mix the genes, or however. Yeah, when you're talking about crossbreeding animals, that's a big difference. The mule, the animal, the horse happened. Yeah, there's a similar breeds in effect. You can't actually breed a human into a horse. Yeah.
Yes.
As far as I understand, not naturally. Yeah. For example, yes, it's all fake and false. What will happen? I think they did Dolly. Different thing, Dolly the sheep, if I remember, and things like this. But
it was cloned. That's different.
That's cloned, but that's different. Yeah. I'm just trying to think around here. To be able to do that. Yeah, I mean, I believe that they're looking to actually grow replacement organs separately in places. I saw a video this week in Israel where they're actually got a machine that prints meat, believe it or not, which is along the same lines, I'd imagine. Making synthetic things. It's again, I've got a lot of things. Man playing. I don't know. Not everyone here is religious, so I understand. Man playing God. That is a fear. And what do you breed? What's the next step? Okay, you're trying to do something good for humanity. Well, they're already telling us there's too many people on the planet anyway, which we know is nonsense. The birth rate's going down like mad at the moment. The whole idea of doing it, yeah, killing. So you put for me, a human brain, and I'm thinking engineering wise here, is meant for my fingers, my toes, and everything else, how it operates. Okay, we've just been discussing this, but yeah, a human brain in a pig, the way it functions would be surely very different. Yeah, and I know using this example. Well, okay,
We don't know because
we don't.
you
Yeah,
know they haven't got as far as developing
yeah.
an adult
Well, of
pig
course,
with a
yeah,
human brain. We
yeah. I
don't
mean,
know if the pig would be able to talk,
well, I would imagine that again,
would have emotions.
it would probably have emotions. It would probably have reason. Talking might be a little bit more complex because of the way that the muscles work. Well,
I'm not,
okay, yeah, the way the tongue and everything else. So humans are designed in a certain way. I'm thinking from an engineering point of view, and interfacing would be the term I would use. How would you interface that? At some point, you'd have to have some sort of artificial thing to actually do it. And I'm talking again about the limbs, have some sort of unit that would be similar to that, because a pig's muscles around its mouth will still be very, very different for humans. And you learn this when you become a teacher, and I've spoken to linguists, how we train our tongue and things like
once
this.
again, we don't know if this chimera
Yeah,
would have a pig's face, a
yeah.
complete pig's face.
Well, that's it.
If, you know, it'll be a mixture of the two, just like a mule and a donkey. You know,
Yeah. Well, again,
they're similar, but they're very different.
yeah.
You know,
It,
um, and also one of the things that I touched on was when does life begin?
well,
For religious people, life begins
inception.
from
Yeah,
inception.
yeah.
So you know they're killing these embryos, which could be human.
Mm.
You know, up to 20 weeks, and that you know is that ethical?
Well, yeah, okay, I'll eat meat and everything. Is killing any animal ethical? Some people would argue, but
No, but we're talking human.
human, yeah, but I'm going
You
into
can't
this,
let
yeah,
that you can't let that
yeah,
escape.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm making the point, killing anything to some people is wrong.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm not getting that argument now. Yeah, but the other thing is, yes, if it's human, that can't be ethical in my thinking now. Just thinking now, you are killing a life that could potentially be a reasoning, yeah, interacting thing in society. Yeah, I mean, it's a frightening thought. And again, you step away from, remember the 1984 novel where they test tube, they were creating humans and things like that, and banning other activities as well that created humans. You're getting dangerously close to that. Again, I'm jumping forward a bit. There's argument, but yeah, we're pushing that. So we could be running into a different agenda, and we could be building things. I mean, you could build, you could be building the ideal human, or human, as you say, chimera, for military purposes, something that could move quite quickly, reason, do something.
Send them into battle just to be slaughtered.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. Again, I come from science fiction
I
angle
think I
on this.
think
Yeah,
I think in the Ukraine
mm,
they sort of made this uh, comment, um, which really brought home
mm,
the butchering
mm,
that Wood was calling the battlefronts
mm.
meat grinders.
Yeah. Well, that's always been a way of doing it.
You know,
Oh no, I
so
mean,
it reduces a human being to just a pound of flesh. You know,
well, I remember in the UK going back probably 15 years or something, they had a program on where they would have just ordinary people running a battle plan, and they had a Sandhurst advisor there. I don't think he was full military. He's an Israeli guy actually, and he was terming, like, from Roman times, he would call it the meat grinding, and that's exactly what it is. That's not a new term. I think I read that in Andy McNabb, I think years ago. This term. It's a yeah. I've actually used it in my lessons quite a few times to Brazilians, just a little bit of shock with it. Yeah, to bring it home that this is war. And like yesterday, I was doing a lesson, and somehow we got onto talking about war and things because I was talking about some music that be inspired by history, which I've actually done a YouTube list, which I might put a link down below. Now I've mentioned it, of music that's been inspired by historical events, and there's some of it is about war and how horrible war is and dreadful. And yes, it is always been called meat grinding, because that's what it is. I mean, particularly in Roman times, where it's the way the Romans would operate, the shields going through with spears, or the swords, something else, but just keep going, go. Is how they actually wiped out Boudicca's army. That was, is either the Romans were very nearly beaten by Boudicca, and they just went through the way they did it, the Romans. And if your mate fell down, you just cleared up the sheer wall. You didn't worry about it. You just kept going. That was real meat grinding. You couldn't beat it. I mean, today we've got it today, where you're doing even rifles, and you talked about the tanks the other day. Get the hell out of it, because you're a sitting target. I mean, it is the futility of war. It's always been known about. It was spoken about and written about in ancient times through Morses, about when you see the waste of life. On the other hand, I think there was a German philosopher said, war is man's obligation to himself, because it advances science and it advances medical knowledge and controls the population to a certain degree. Again, this is
because when we look back on like the last two Great Wars, the fact that they were called the Great Wars, and we regarded the soldiers that didn't come back as the fallen, it was almost poetic.
Yeah.
Instead of saying that they succumbed to the meat grinding, they were ground down. Especially the First World War, because they were in trenches like 100 yards apart, and just bang, bang, taking pot shots at each other.
Yeah, I mean,
and it was like people being led to their own slaughter, if you like.
Well, I mean, it is a natural human thing to dehumanize something. I mean, the Vikings have Valhalla, and the other place as well, where if you died with a sword in your hand in battle, it is a glorious death. To encourage them, almost dehumanizing it. You're going to be a god. We know there's other people that use that same analogy today. War is an incredible thing. It's always been with us. We're still in the 21st century. They've never been so globally technically advanced, and yet we're still going around killing each other over land, effectively. Wherever you might stand on it and what's right, what's wrong. We are, we've got incredible ability to do mass slaughter now, in a way that we've never had before. I mean, the First World War was the first actual mechanized war, if you like, on an industrial scale. Incredible, the weapons that were developed then. I mean, you got to think today we've got similar weapons. We've got even more advanced ones, and we spoke about Ukraine not being flattened yet, it's a possibility. And Ukraine probably have the possibility to flatten great tracts of or the Western world of Russia, and that's not happening, thankfully. I'm not suggesting I want to see that. I'd like them to all lay down their arms and start talking. Personally, I think we're getting to the point of being ridiculous now, as you're saying there. I'm not going to make no bones about it. I'm afraid certain politicians in the US the UK are probably quite right. Not always people I'd always agree with, but it is a yeah, war has always been with us since Cain and Abel. Cain hit Abel over the head. It's a very emotional thing. We see the media report it in a very unemotional way when suits them, and an emotional way. If a Russian gets killed, oh, good. Put it on, chalk it up as a score. If Ukrainian, the brave Ukrainian soldiers died. These are all guys who are, probably women as well, who are facing uncertainty every day. And we are losing sight of this, and you're quite right, by using different semantics. Yeah, we call them the fallen. We're not calling them now, you know, the glorious dead. Yeah.
You mentioned the Ukraine. Let me just get this last point in.
Yeah.
Because I said that all of this would be coming back
to
as something. I was going to go on to talk about embryos being made out of T cells and not having a father nor a mother.
Okay.
It'd just be an anonymous T cell, but I don't think we've got time for that.
No, we haven't now. Yeah.
And the ethics of if building a human being from a T cell, like I said, no father, no mother, just a neutral. You don't know how that's, and that also is for the body parts.
Yeah.
But what sort of triggered all of this was 2 days ago, a guy was arrested leaving the Ukraine with a child, a young girl. He was a child trafficker.
Yeah. Okay.
And the object is to sell the girl for body parts, for spare parts.
Yeah.
She was going to be broken for spares, as what we use. We'd use that term if we talk about cars, you know, breaking for spares.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, the young girl would be broken for spares. And after he was interrogated, he said that was the third child. He was taken across the frontier. I think he was going to Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic. And he would be getting $25,000 for each child he delivered, you know, to the next, whoever it is up the food chain of this. And we don't know if this is a lone wolf. We don't know if it's part of a bigger industry, which is could be why the US is wanting to invest. Even as Zelensky said when he went to the US Congress, it's a good investment if you send us more money and not more arms. You know, you don't invest in war. You know, you don't make an investment in war. But anyway, that's what they said. And we know that from history has taught us that Haiti was rife of children being smuggled out of Haiti, also for body parts.
Yeah.
You know, and so what I'm trying to get, the overall question I'm trying to get to, and I hope I have time to answer it, is the ethics. Do we do these research and make these chimeras and do these body transplants and make these these viable humans from T cells, or do the people continue smuggling small children out to be broken for spares?
Well, again, it's as I said. I mean, I was talking about growing organs in a lab, which is effectively what I understood was some of the research happening as well, which is, you know, pretty bad problems with that. I mean, obviously, taking kids from a battlefield or wherever, not even a battlefield, and doing that cannot be right. I mean, that guy is inhuman. Yeah. yeah, where there's profit, people forget their every conscience or every good fibre in their body.
Well, is he inhuman more than the scientists?
Well,
Maybe
again,
half pig, half humans.
well, this is it. I mean, the ideal would be not to
Dilemma.
have any of it, but yeah, dilemma. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's probably better if you do it in a more controlled way. You're not taking a life of a child, particularly something that's been bred for basically that purpose. Bring them to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and to bring the end of the universe, the restaurant, the end of the universe. Again, we could revisit this because we're running out of time now. I mean, obviously, I would go towards, if you gave me a choice, well, obviously the lab growths, the lab experience, or the lab growth breeding is far more palatable. Let's put it that way. Yeah, than taking a life that already exists. That maybe that's an unconscious life, the other life isn't. It is a we're trying to, I mean, who are we doing this for anyway? Normal people won't be able to afford the operations unless we are going to go mass production on it. Are we doing it for elite people? Yeah. So, which brings into something else that we both believe is happening in the world. I think.
Are we doing it? Are we doing it for health plans? Who are big companies?
For it? Well, that's it. Who's ever paying for it?
Right.
It is a. I mean, when we talk about, I've got to be careful. I'll say it's Eastern Europe. We're talking about severe gangsism across there. With the guys going through. I mean, that's evidently not sponsored by any. Well, you wouldn't like to think it's sponsored by any major corporation. If that comes in, whoa, that would be quite something. Yeah. Again, we'll visit ethics maybe in another, even as a special one day. Human ethics around the world and what we consider. But yes, but at the moment we're getting close to having to wrap up this session.
Okay.
I found it quite interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Food for thought.
Yeah. But yeah. Yeah.
Over to you.
Well, thank you for watching, people. I hope you've enjoyed this different discussion. We got away from the world of politics into something that's probably very deep, philosophical, and something that could affect all our lives as well. It's certainly been an interesting discussion today. Please write your comments down below if you've got any feelings or thoughts. Agree, disagree with us, we don't care. Well, we do care. We like to hear what your feelings are. Yeah. We'd like to know what people want to think, and if you've got anything else you'd like us to look at in the future, please let us know as well, because we're part of what we do is we like a challenge to talk about things. Steve does some very good research. I do not know what Steve is going to talk about, which makes it rather interesting. So at this point, I'm similar to yourselves. Okay, well, thank you, Steve. Goodbye, everyone. If you enjoyed this discussion, can you please like, subscribe, and share it? Thank you.